So the topic for today's episode is the V word, and I put V in quotation marks, and I'm going to share with you what that is. But first, I want to welcome you back to another episode of the Be a Better You podcast, and thank you so much for being a valued listener here week to week. I really, truly appreciate you, and I strive each week to bring you something valuable and helpful along your healing journeys. Now, I wrote this episode twice in two different ways, and I finally scrapped the idea of even delivering this message at all. I kept hesitating out of fear and worry that it might not be received well. And as a guide for helping you heal, my intent is always to bring you episodes that are going to help shift your mindset, expand your awareness, and help you see things in different ways so that you can overcome emotional abuse at every level possible. So, the V word. I've talked about this actually on other episodes before, but I'm going to give you a different take on the V word today. So, what is the V word? Victimhood. Now, if you've been victimized, you absolutely have my utmost sympathy and compassion and empathy in some ways, because I was also victimized too. And you can read all about that in my memoir. But the key part of my victimization, my personal victimization, is that it was in the past. There was a time where I wore my victimhood like a badge of honor. I might as well have worn a big giant V on my shirt like Superman, because that's how I held on to that. But I didn't need to. I didn't need to have that as a badge of honor, right? Why? Because I was telling my story anyway to anybody who would listen, even strangers in public, right? Right after I escaped my abuse, I remember telling a man at the tire store about how I was abused. I don't even know this person. Like, what the heck, right? I cried to my family and my friends. I talked incessantly to my therapist about it week to week for 4.5 years. And also, to make it worse, I internalized my victimhood with rumination and negativity. Was I a victim? Absolutely. I was a victim because of my abuser. But I remained a victim for a significant amount of time because of choice, because of the past influences of my abuse. I still chose to be a victim. And you're like, why would anybody choose to be a victim? And I'm going to get into that. So just stay with me here, because it's important to be able to see things in a different way if you want to heal. And that's why I'm bringing you this. But my abuser had so much influence over me that I was leading my life with fear and insecurity. And this happened so many times that it actually kept me in victim mentality or victim mode, however you would like to phrase that. Now, I wasn't choosing to be afraid, like, oh, I want to be in fear, I'm going to choose to be afraid. That's not what I'm saying. But I did choose the thoughts that were keeping me in fear, because our thoughts are what create our emotions. So let me give you an example of this. In my upcoming book that's coming out in February of 2025, I actually talk about these fears. I detail these fears. And one of the stories that I tell is that I had originally hired a female attorney right out of the gates as soon as actually probably right before I even left my ex. I had been contacting attorneys. And she was not doing a good job for me. She was not doing a good job representing me. And I talk about this in my book. And I was really afraid because I didn't know what I was going up against. And I didn't feel like this person was actually in my corner. And she was going to be my downfall. If I didn't fire this attorney, I was not going to succeed. And I just knew it in the deepest parts of my soul. But my fears were actually dictating my behavior. And if I let those fears dictate my behavior, then it would have been disastrous. Why? Because the victimization that I experienced in the form of abuse, in the form of the control and the manipulation and the gaslighting and all the things that happened to me, that eroded my self-worth so much that I didn't believe, number one, that I could fire her because I had no confidence to do it, right? Like, oh, she's smarter than me and she knows more than me, and maybe I'm just being too, annoying, or maybe I'm not thinking of this clearly enough. I didn't have any confidence in myself, right? So I actually didn't believe that I could do it. And number two, I actually did believe that it was mean, or that it was rude, or that I was going to hurt her feelings if I fired her, right? After she'd represented me for a few months. So even this situation had me feeling like a victim, right? This like weak, powerless person. Now, I want to say this. I was abused, right? And that's the reality of the situation. But what this victim mentality sounded like in my head was, I was abused. I don't have any confidence. I was hurt. I can't speak up. I was victimized. I'm weak. I'm helpless. That's the story that kept replaying in my head. So when you're going to take action and you have those kinds of stories replaying in your head, you might not be able to take the action you truly think, or that truly is best for you. So I just want you to think of the contrast here for a minute between a victim and a victor. So what traits and qualities do you think of when you think of a victim? Just take a minute and think about that. What are the traits and qualities that you think of when you think of a victim? And for me, it was things like helpless, weak, scared. Those were the kinds of things that were coming up for me. But then when you think about a victor, like, how do you think about that? Strong, powerful, confident, winner, right? So this brings me to the question, why would anyone, either consciously or unconsciously, choose victimhood? Choose that V word? Why would anyone choose that? Even after, might I add, the abuse has ended, right? Because if you were victimized, but you're no longer a victim, why would you still choose that mentality? And there are a few answers that I'm going to share with you. But the number one thing is, you could still be experiencing abusive behavior by others, right? So when I left my abusive marriage, I was still experiencing the manipulation, the attempts at control, right? I was still experiencing that post-separation abuse, right? So of course, logically, naturally, I'm going to feel like a victim because I'm still being attacked, right? Number two, you get something positive from it. And hear me out here, because I'm going to break these down, okay? But number one, if you're still experiencing abusive behavior, you will automatically play your role unless you think of something else to play, unless you think of a new role to play, right? It will be automatic. They are the perpetrator. That's their role. You are the victim, right? This is likely a role that you're familiar with, like I was, right? 20 years I had been victimized. I felt like a victim, right? I knew that role really, really well. Then when my abuser wouldn't let up, even after I divorced him, I still continued to play that role, right? In some regards, I was still playing the role of that victim. He's abusive, so that automatically makes me the victim, right? Well, not exactly. So I'll dive in. I didn't realize I had a different option, or I could choose a different role. I thought hero versus villain, right? He's the villain, I'm the hero. Or in this case, he's the abuser, I'm the victim. Now, I had the option to choose how to identify myself, regardless of my circumstances. So why did I choose victim? Other than it being automatic, right? And the role that he played versus the role that I was playing. So that brings me to number two. I was getting something positive out of it. Now you could be asking, what positive could possibly come from being a victim, or being in victimhood, or having victim mentality, or thinking victim types of thinkings, right? Now hear me out. I am not judging anyone who has been or is currently a victim, or in victimhood, or carrying victim mentality at all. Why? Because I have the very clear answers as to why they are in that victim mode. And if you are, why you are as well. Here's the thing. Your ego's job is to protect you. And when you've been victimized or are victimized, even currently, what do you need a lot of? Protection, right? And that's your ego's job, is to protect you. So what does your ego do? It jumps up and says, they're out to get me. I'm helpless. I'm weak. I can't protect myself, right? And it says, they're bad. They're the villain. And if that's true, what does that also make you besides the victim? If they're the bad one, that makes you the good one, right? If they're the bad one, you aren't the bad one. And I know you aren't the bad one. And you know you aren't the bad one. But here's the thing I want you to take note of. Paste this on a Post-it note. Stick it wherever you need to remember it. Ready? You do not need to be the victim to be the good one. And actually, you can be the victor and be the good one. The choice isn't in just saying, I'm the victor now. Okay? We're not just claiming victor. No. The choice is in, number one, what you believe, what you choose to believe, and number two, how you choose to behave based on those beliefs. So when I was in victim mode, when I was feeling very victimized during my abuse, after, for several years after, and then I finally decided, wait, I know that I didn't do these horrible abusive things. I know that I had a role in my relationship, but I know I wasn't abusing anyone in that relationship. So I can be victorious. I can be the victor, if you want to use that term, and be the good one at the same time, right? They don't have to be mutually exclusive. So just because you feel like a victim, right? Just because you feel that way and that you have been victimized doesn't mean you can't change that. Doesn't mean you can't say, wait a second, I can still hold on to being good and being right and being the one who wasn't the bad guy. I can still be all those things and let go of being victim. Okay? You do not have to hold on to victim in order to be right, in order to be good. Okay? And that's why I want to bring this to you today, because if you are holding on to whatever it is that you believe that is attached to this label of victim, that is what your behavior is going to be. Okay? So you will behave like a victim. You will act and show up in ways like victims do, right? And a lot of people, like I know specifically some people who I have worked with, they hold on to that victim so tightly because, well, when I go to court, I need everyone to know that he's the bad guy and I'm the good guy. I was the victim, right? But let me ask you this. When I went to court many times and I came out victorious in the end, I wasn't going in with any sort of victim attitude. I wasn't even talking about emotional abuse until the very end. And that's going to be in my book as well. But my point is, some people feel like they need to hold on to that because they're getting something from it, because it makes them feel like other people will validate them or that everyone else will see the truth of who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. But I'm here to tell you, you can show people the truth without holding on to this label of victim. It is absolutely 100% possible because I did it myself. I no longer identify with the victim. I was victimized in the past. I am victorious. I am powerful. I am showing up as a strong woman every single time that I have to face adversity and my abuser. Okay? And I don't need to hold on to feeling like a victim to know the truth of what was done to me and what happened to me, and that it wasn't okay, but that I can show up as the best version of me and release the label of being a victim. Okay? So I'd love for you, if you have a pen and paper, to write this down to help you through this. What do I believe if I am the victim? If I'm holding on to this victim label, what do I believe? And then ask yourself, what would I be believing if I am the victor? If I am the winner? If I am this powerful version of myself? And then look at your answers. What I'd love for you to do is write as many things down as you can. On one side of the page, victim. On the other side of the page, victor. What do I believe if I'm the victim? What do I believe if I'm the victor? And in those answers, you're going to find some insight and some revelations that you may have never thought of before. Then look at all those answers and then make your choice. Who do you want to be? Which one do you want to be? And how long do you want to be it for? So, I hope this message came to you if you needed to hear it. If not, obviously, share it with someone else who might need to hear it. Because my hope for you is that you can shed this victim label if you have it still, because it really is going to hold you back. It is going to keep you from being the greatest, highest version of yourself. And if you're here listening to this podcast, that's what you want. You want to heal. You want to be better. You want to rise above your abuser, right? And really, and honestly, it's not that hard to rise above because the bar is so low where they are, sadly, right? You can do it. You can absolutely shed any semblance of victimhood, that nasty V word, right? You can be the victim. I'm not taking that away from you, from your past, if you were victimized, and if you are still being victimized, okay? But think of it like this. If we labeled that victim as sort of weak and helpless and powerless, and we label our victor as strong and confident and steadfast, right? And we have to go into battle. Who do we want to go into battle as? And if we choose that we want to go into battle as the victim, why is that? What's the reason? And that's what I want you to really reflect on. Again, I want to share with you my utmost compassion, my sympathy and empathy where I can, because this is hard stuff. This isn't easy. This isn't, something that just happens overnight. This takes action. It's not going to be you just listening to my podcast and then never doing anything with it. My hope for you is that you will take the action and the suggestions that I am presenting to help you and implement them and see what comes up. Because even a little bit of reflection and answering some of these questions can give you some really big shifts and changes that could help you on your journey. Again, I want to thank you for being here and listening to this episode and all the episodes that you listen to. We have so many downloads on this podcast. Currently, we have over 142,000 downloads, which is so amazing. And I haven't looked at this in a while, and I'm just so happy that so many of you are listening, taking this in, and sharing it as we grow together. Now, I just wanted to announce, like I mentioned earlier, that my second book, which is the follow-up to my first book, it is a memoir, but it takes place after I left my ex and all the things that happened through my court battles and dealing with my children and my ex up until the present moment. And I want to share this with you because it's going to be released in February. And I just want this to be on your radar to let you know that I appreciate you as a reader and as obviously a listener to this podcast. And more details will be coming out soon about my second book, and I'm super excited to share it with you. And I will talk to you next week.